Welcome to Young Money. I'm Nozipho Mbanjwa. Today we're in Kigali in Rwanda. We've been hosted by the MasterCard Foundation at the Young Africa Works Summit. Now, this is a summit that looks to the role that young people can play as leaders in agricultural transformation. The conversations have been absolutely robust, very intelligent, but more importantly, the conversations have been owned by young people. We're going to bring you some of those conversations now so you can really see what young African farmers are doing on the continent. One of the most popular phrases that you introduced in the panel discussion earlier today was inclusion, inclusion, inclusion. Break it down for us. When we're talking about inclusion in agricultural transformation, what does that picture look like?
When we're talking about inclusion, it's going to be really important that as the agriculture sector on the continent grows and produces more economic benefit, that economic benefit not go only to the top 1%, but rather we use this opportunity of the growth in the agriculture sector to be an opportunity for the growth of all Africans, for the prosperity of all Africans. That's what inclusion is all about.
Right. Let's talk about women for a second. I mean, you're with the ward, and obviously there is a specific focus on ensuring that women are included in the agricultural space. What does that picture currently look like, and what are we working towards?
So at our ward, we're particularly concerned with the leaky pipeline of women's leadership when it comes to agricultural research. We all know that agricultural research, agricultural value chains start at research. As a continent, it's incredibly important that we do our own research for our own problems and we don't rely on external help, because sometimes that may never come. So we've got to invest in our own internal Africa-wide research infrastructure. As we're doing that, it's really important that we play with a full team of players. You don't go into a soccer match with half a team. You don't go in with 5 players and the other team has their full set. As a continent, we're facing tremendous challenges when it comes to agriculture, and we've got to leverage the brilliance of absolutely everyone we can, and that means the women as well. So Award is working on ensuring that Africa's agricultural research leverages the talents of both the men and the women on this continent to solve our pressing problems.
Absolutely. Now, of course, research becomes the base of the value chain, but you need investment as the fluid that keeps the value chain together. And we know that traditionally, if we're looking at financing history, that women are the ones who are unable to access and unlock finance in the main. What do we need to do to enable women to access finance for agricultural opportunities more easily than they currently do?
2 things. First, we need to change our attitudes. We need to change our ingrained attitudes that women can't do it. Women have been doing it. If you look at the history of this continent, as recently as structural adjustment programs, it is African women that kept this continent going financially throughout structural adjustment. They traded, they did business, and to the extent that our systems and structures have kept women's access to finance low, we then are shooting ourselves in the foot. The first thing is our attitudes and recognizing and learning from history that women can, women do, women have. Second is policies, rules and regulations. For those of us whose minds won't get changed, then let behavior be regulated by rules that guarantee equality of access. I think those 2 things, the cultural norms and the rules themselves, and then of course investing in the women themselves so that they have the confidence to keep remembering that they can, they have, and they will continue to.
Just as a final question, if we look at agribusiness opportunities, ultimately every business needs to have access to markets and it has to be competitive when it gets to the market. Are there ways that we can better support women entrepreneurs in the agricultural space with giving them enablers to get them to access markets in a way that's slightly easier than they're currently faced with?
I think that's the questions around access to markets is where agriculture rubs up against other sectors of the economy. So, for example, what's our road infrastructure like? Are our rural spaces economically vibrant enough to support markets for women's produce, for all our produce, right? I think it's important that we be a lot more diverse, a lot more broad in terms of thinking about where these markets are and where they're going to come from. Cities are not, even though African cities are growing, they're not going to be the only markets. Can we have vibrant rural economies that provide sustainable markets for agricultural produce? And that's not just a question for finance, it's not just a question for infrastructure or the agriculture ministries, it's a question for central governments and all arms of central government, including health.
Of course, the MasterCard Foundation must have already seen exciting examples or case studies that indicate that this is not just based on optimism, that it is possible to have agricultural transformation in Africa, that it is possible to have young people leading that particular change. Can you give us a sense of maybe some global examples that you think Africa could actually be learning from and implementing some of those in our own markets?
Yeah. There are many examples, but perhaps the most important one to look at, or the one that we know about more easily, is China. About 30, 40 years ago, China had a very large population of overall, but a lot of young people. Most of its people lived in rural areas, but the economy was weak. Today, China has a good number, a large population of its people living in urban centers, fewer people in rural areas, but they're producing a lot more food because of the very deliberate efforts they made to involve young people, but also to improve the way they carried on agriculture. Mechanizing, bringing in technology, bringing in better seeds, transforming agriculture into a higher value, higher productivity agriculture. I think there are important lessons that we can learn, and we have exactly the same situation in Africa. Young people who are excited about it. We have some already who are in the sector. We need to do more of that, but also do it at a higher level, bring in technology, involve women, empower women to do more and do better so as we can raise productivity.
If we were to have a frank conversation with ourselves as Africans, is there a particular space where we're shooting ourselves in the foot and that is possibly slowing down our progression towards realizing a similar or even better reality to the example you've just raised of China?
I think that the first thing is we need good policies that deliberately point to young people as the driver to transformation. We need an enabling environment that enables young people to actually participate in this sector. And that means not only policies, but also financial services that support young people to engage in this sector. And at the bottom of it all, education, knowledge. Because without adequate knowledge, backed by strong research, and then connecting this knowledge to farmers, it will not happen.
Now, as a final question, all of this, the vision, the process of getting there, the frank conversations that we must have with each other must make business sense at some level. So why does this matter to the MasterCard Foundation? How does having these conversations make business sense for you?
These conversations are very important. First of all, it's important to sensitize people on the importance of the sector, the importance of transforming the sector, but most importantly, it's important to send a message that young people are the drivers for this transformation. And then to provide a platform like this, and this is what we're trying to do under the Young Africa Work Summit this year, provide this summit for people to learn from each other, learn from the young people who are already doing something about it. We had the good stories this morning from the young people who are already trying to do something on their own, and to show that a young person can get in this sector and succeed. and then to hear from each other how to do it, and to get motivated to go home and do it. But it's also a message to the rest of us who are not young people today, government people, private sector, funders like us, to hear that young people do want to get into this sector. And I think it is very important that all of us change our mindsets, because there is a perception out there that young people don't want to get in. But if you hear the stories today, there is no doubt that young people want to get into this space, but they need strong, good policies, good enabling environment that would help them get there. So this is a very good platform to send that message out and to motivate the young people, send a message to us in government, as funders and others, that we have a job to do to enable young people to really become the drivers of transformation in this sector.
Andrew, thank you for making the time to chat to us. Talk to us a little bit about the 1 Acre Fund. What does the fund do?
Most of the world's poor people are farmers, and they're the hardest working people on the planet. We provide farmers with simple tools and training that enable them to work their way out of poverty.
Right. And how do you provide them with those tools? Do they need to pay for that service, or how does it work?
We operate a lot like a regular private company, so farmers pay us for our services, and we deliver services to them. We dignify them as customers through our network of more than 2,000 full-time field officers.
Right. And of course, you've started off by saying that generally the world's poor are the ones who are probably sitting in the agricultural space. And if you're servicing them with a financial service as well, what are the realities that you're having to grapple with to ensure that they have access to that finance?
Absolutely. Rural people, so farmers live in rural places, and they live in places that are generally very inaccessible. So we're very careful to bring our services within walking distance, really deep into villages and things like that. And I think we're a misperception. People think that rural farmers are not bankable, that they're not really good investments, but they are the hardest working, most proud people on the planet, and we are very, very excited to work with them in a market basis to provide them with loans that enable them to improve their lives.
And of course, the traditional banks are generally not wanting to play in that space. But as you said, infrastructure challenges and access to the actual market. So how does your funding mechanism work in terms of interest rates that would then be levied on the loans to make up for that proximity that you're able to get?
Yes, so you're right. Like most traditional banks think of rural farmers as being completely unbankable, but we think they're really hardworking, good risks to take. We charge regular interest rates that fit the microfinance markets in the countries that we operate, and we have a 99.5% on-time repayment rate.
Yeah. Now, if we talk about microfinance, the issue of women always comes up, because we've seen examples, Grameen Bank and others, that show that women are really fantastic payers, and this is why microfinance becomes viable. What has been your experience of this?
Most of the farmers that we work with are women, and it's why I'm interested in this work. I mean, they're so completely inspiring. Just the other day, I was walking home from the market on a Saturday, and I saw this woman emerge from her field with a hoe on her back and a child on her back, and she was just so clearly hardworking. She would do anything to make her family succeed. That's the kind of customer we want to bank on.
Talk to me about the different levels of progression and the size of the farmers. Is there a possibility that this becomes, or your loans become, a stepping stone to actual commercial farming, or is it still very much subsistence farming?
Our goal is to help our families enable whatever they want to succeed, their dreams. And so for some cases, some farmers, they're just happy to see their children be educated, and I think that's a very worthy goal. Other farmers just take off, they go on and hire more people, they create all these enterprises and things like that, and it's truly wonderful to see people reaching their potential.
Right, and do they then graduate out of the fund once they reach a certain commercial level?
Yes, so we see many of our farmers, after they've received our services for a few years, then graduating on to other services, including formal banking.
So if I was a young farmer watching the show right now and had my interest piqued in terms of accessing your financial services, how do I go about doing it?
One Acre Fund is available in more than 2,000 rural communities, and it's a simple matter of just attending our meetings and expressing interest.
Do you have an online presence for if people can actually get onto the internet and find out where one of your outlets are?
Yes, so our website is www.oneacrefund.org, and you can learn a lot more there.
Let's take a short break, but when we come back, do join us as we bring you some of the most exciting young farmers on the African continent talking about their agri-businesses and what they would like to see in the agricultural space.
Enough has not been done, but I believe there's more to do. And with that, I believe us young people who are involved in agriculture, coming out and sharing the success stories we've had in agriculture is a motivation to other young people who for so long have been discouraged by the societal stereotypes in agriculture. So yes, I'm optimistic that with more success stories of young people, there's going to be improvements and the image of agriculture in Africa.
What should young people be doing more of themselves to ensure that they are getting the investment opportunities that do exist and that they're getting into the agricultural spaces that are being opened?
I think for us young people, we always need to be ready. They say luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And I think for most of us to be prepared, there's so many things we are passionate about. There are many projects we can be involved in communities. So I would advise for every young person to at least always be ready with a project, with a business plan of something you are already passionate, so that when you meet that one person who can support you, you already have it.
Yeah. Now, one of the big conversations has been about using technology as an enabler, and we know that young people are digital natives. Are you accessing the technology though, or are there barriers that still need to be considered?
I think with technology, mostly for us young people, it mostly depends on where you are. So like for the young people in cities, they easily have access to technology. But for most young people, for example, in rural areas who are actually involved in most of the agricultural projects, do not even actually have the knowledge of how to use such technology. So I think there is need to train and also have access to technology, especially for young people in the local areas.
And the final question, how do we get young African women more involved in the agricultural space?
Sorry?
How do we get more young African women involved in the agricultural space?
I think for me, one of the things I'm stressing on is education. I believe our education system is really mostly discourages us, especially girls, to venture in agriculture, because sometimes it's shameful as a girl to say, I have passion in agriculture, because people don't consider agriculture as a potential career. So for me, the education system needs to value agriculture the same way they value engineering, the same way they value law as a potential career. And that way, the most young people who are actually passionate in agriculture can have the freedom to come out and acclaim their love for agriculture.
Okay, well, it was from family. So my father actually invited me. He bought a farm in 2008, and then he encouraged me to come and join him about 6 years ago. So my background's in finance, so no, this was not a sexy space for me. But I guess as I got in, it was about discovering all the opportunities that actually are available. And that to me just made much more sense, because it's not just about farming. As you know, the whole value chain. But even like creating businesses out of farming is already like a niche on its own, and that's kind of where my focus is right now.
Tell us a little bit about the work that you're currently doing. What's been the most exciting piece of that experience thus far?
So what I actually discovered was the fact that youth in agriculture, especially in farming, is not supported well enough to be able to thrive and actually succeed. And that's where I focus my business. So with that, I've been able to travel the country to talk at conferences to really just explain a little bit more about what we do, which is stakeholder engagement of established agri-businesses, to be able to put together programs that actually support young farmers on the ground. So for me, it's been it's been very exciting because there's been a lot of support from big business who actually are interested to help young farmers.
And maybe let's talk a little bit about that, because you'll find that young farmers say that they don't have access to big business, and you're saying actually there is appetite from big business. What kind of spaces do we need to create so that those connections can be made?
So I think in my experience, it's really being able to get out there and actually go, for instance, conferences like this, you've got to get out and find out who's doing what when. So participation is very important. Another strategic move that I made is actually to join AFASA, African Farmers Association of South Africa, and I volunteered to be a part of the management structure. And currently I'm one of the directors of the organization, and I head up the youth development. So in creating myself and opening myself up, that's what actually gave me access. So a lot of people think that they're going to sit on their farm and someone's going to come and save them. It doesn't work like that. You've got to participate. You've got to be part of something bigger than who you are. Because in farming, especially if you're a smallholder farmer, you've got to be able to join with other farmers to be able to have access to markets, access to funding. Because you're right, it's not easy to just access them on your own. So the thing that is actually helping me is the fact that I actually have contact of about 700 farmers, young farmers who are interested to participate, and that's what big business wants to talk to, not one farmer.
Right, and I mean, you speak about the value chain, which I think is absolutely important. Where do you see the opportunities higher up in the value chain that go beyond production?
So it's very important to start at the bottom. You know, there's got to be production for you to be able to build that factory that will actually produce the value-added produce. But I think in ways of marketing different products, that's where the opportunity is. I mean, there's a young farmer who is, her background is in marketing, and her family is actually a farming, family. But she wasn't interested in farming. And so what she did, she came back home and she found a way of how to participate with the current market to say, we have a specific type of beef, how do I get this out and actually make that our product? And so it's about us taking the knowledge that we've already got and seeing how we plug it into what actually exists within the production space.
So at FarmDrive, we really are using data to do credit risk assessment for smallholder farmers. And how we are doing this is part of the data that we collect is from the farmers themselves, and using simple mobile phones on SMS, they're able to get onto a platform, engage with us, and we're able to collect data on who are they, where are they from, what are they doing. And then we add other sets of data that range from satellite data, weather data, market information, and have built models that then analyze all this data and spit out a credit score plus loan recommendations that we sell to financial institutions.
Right. So you have data that gives you a sense of the credit worthiness of the farmers. How is this changing the lives of smallholder farmers?
So typically the smallholder farmers have not been able to get access to credit from financial institutions because they are considered as thin file clients. They don't have so much footprint in the formal financial sector. So for some of these farmers that are actually benefiting from our work, they're farmers that previously have not gotten access to any credit. So now with credit, they're able to invest more in their farms. They're able to buy quality inputs, improved fertilizer and seeds. They're able to invest in irrigation systems on their farms and just build resilience, which therefore results in higher production, higher incomes for them, and they're able to provide for their families.
Let's talk about the size of the reach of FarmDrive right now. How many farmers are currently part of the data capturing, and what are your targets for growth?
So right now we have more than 3,000 farmers on our platform, and are planning to grow that actually by almost 100 times in the course of this year.
And how are you going to do that?
So one is really working closely with some of the partners that we've already established. There are organizations that already have farmer networks, and we're keenly looking at how can we reach the mass markets, and are working very closely with telcos. So Safaricom, which is one of the biggest telco in Kenya, happened to have invested in FarmDrive, and we're working out on a partnership with them and figuring out how do we reach more farmers and make sure they're getting access to financial services.
Just as a final question, what's next for Rita? I mean, FarmDrive has obviously been a phenomenal success. What's next for your own personal journey?
So For me, Farm Drive, we've just begun the journey. There's so much, there's 7 million farmers, smallholder farmers in Kenya alone. We've only reached 3,000, so there is so much to be done. When you look at Africa, there are more than 50 million smallholder farmers, and all these are farmers who are in need of financial services and other services. So there's still a lot to do in this space, and I know the next few years I'm going to be hugely dedicated in that, and just engaging the youth as part of Farm Drive, and also just besides Farm Drive, to engage them and help them also grow and build businesses in agriculture.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us, guys. It's been an awesome show talking to some of the continent's most exciting young people in the agricultural space. Now, remember that if you would like the Young Money crew to come to you, all you need to do is just follow me on Twitter. It's @TheRealNozi or @CNBC Africa. Don't forget the hashtag. It's Young Money 410. Until next time, it's goodbye.